All right, so we've got our basic edit down. We have some good contrast. Our skin tone's looking pretty good. Now we're going to do some portrait-specific edits, some local adjustments. So you need to be logged in using your school Adobe ID. That's going to give you the full features of the Lightroom app. The free version doesn't have these first two settings, selective and healing. It might have healing, but I know it doesn't have selective. So if you don't see those or they don't work, you're not logged in using your school Adobe ID. So make sure to do that. I'm going to zoom in. This is not ideal on a phone. I'm just going to say that right now. This is not ideal on a phone. And also, I typically don't do most of this in Lightroom. I do this step in Photoshop. But I'm going to show you how it works, quick and dirty method. I do recommend if you have access to a computer, use the Lightroom app on the computer or lightroom.adobe.com on the computer or Chromebook. That way the trackpad works a little bit better than the screen. All right, so I'm going to do the healing brush. All right, so I'm going to zoom in on her face. And the healing brush is going to allow us to remove blemishes. We don't want to get too carried away. You know, we'll just get rid of a few blemishes. I'm going to click on the healing brush. It gives us some options on the left. I'm going to click the bottom one. It says opacity of 100%. I want that. If yours isn't 100%, click on it and drag your thumb up. Right, down is lower, up is higher. Feather 50% is good. And then here, brush size, I'm going to make mine, since I'm zoomed in, smaller. I want the brush size about the size of a blemish. So looking at her, I'm going to say around 35, all right? And then what I'm going to do is, right where I see some blemishes, I'm going to click with my thumb. And Lightroom's going to do a pretty good job of finding areas that match. And again, not ideal on the app. It's not as good, but it'll work. All right. And so I accidentally clicked in a couple spots, but I've gotten rid of a couple, and I would go back through and I'd spend a little bit more time doing it. And then I could come over, right, and then get some other areas. But I want to show you how that works. Use the healing brush. Now we're going to come in and I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we could see our whole image. All right. I'm going to come under my selective edits and I'm going to hit the plus sign and I'm going to do the brush. And actually, before I do the brush, I'm going to zoom in again on her face. We're going to smooth the skin a little bit. So we're going to bring the clarity down. Now, if you have like grizzled old grandpa, an old cowboy, and he's got this like grizzled face, you're going to do the opposite of what we're going to do here. This is more for like a beauty portrait. But what I'm going to do, and this is very challenging on a phone, but I'm going to take my brush, all right? And I'm going to bring my flows down to maybe 70. That's the bottom circle. I'm going to bring that down to about 70. I'm going to bring the feather down to maybe 40%. And then I'm going to paint with my thumb over the skin. And the red right now is just an overlay. If you don't see the red, click on the diamond, all right? And what I'm doing is I don't want the eyes. I don't want the lips. This overlay is just showing me where I'm painting with my thumb, and it is not easy on the phone. I get it. I typically wouldn't do it on the phone. I don't want to get in the hair too much. If you get too far out, then you might want to delete and redo. I'm going to do something like this, and I'm going to come under effects, and I'm going to bring clarity down. And that's going to smooth this out. I don't want to go too far to the left because she'll look plastic, all right? So I'm going to do on this particular one, maybe around 25. I'm going to bring texture down, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15, something like that. Just smoothing the skin a little bit, but without that plastic look, all right? If you were doing somebody, like I said, more grizzled kind of look, you would want to bring the clarity up. I'm going to hit the check mark in the bottom right. I'm going to save that smoothing. While I'm here, I'm going to do another selective edit. We're going to brighten up the eyes. I'm going to do plus sign, and we could do radial or a brush. I think I'm going to do the brush. I think the brush is a little bit easier on the phone. On the computer, I would do a radial tool, and I'll show you that in a minute. What I'm going to do is I want to brighten up the eyes a little bit. So I'm going to paint over the eyes, both of them just like that. Maybe a little bit more on there. And we're going to paint over the eyes. I'm going to come under light. I'm going to bring the exposure up. Not too crazy, right? Too crazy looks bad. I don't want to notice the effect too much. I just want to brighten it just a little bit. And then I might bring out the highlight, bring up the highlight something like that. And then click OK. Now I'm going to take my selective edit again, do another plus sign, another brush. I'm going to make my brush smaller. I want the feather to be really high on this one, maybe all the way to 100. I'm going to bring my brush size so that it's about the size of her iris. So I'm just eyeballing the red dot, and I want it to be about the size of her iris. And I'm going to click on the iris like that. Oops, can I get the other one on there? There we go. Feathers at 100. Oops. Now it's a little bit outside the iris. And then what we're going to do with those is we're going to come under color. We're going to bump up the saturation. We're going to make the iris color just pop a little bit. And then under effects, bring the clarity, which is going to bring some detail into the eyes. I'm going to do the check mark. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to make sure things aren't too bright, and they're looking okay. They're not too bad. Now I'm going to do another selective edit. I want to darken the background a little bit. It's called a vignette. There's a built-in vignette under effects. I don't like to do that. I like to control it with a radial gradient. And I want to darken the background behind her a little bit and brighten her up. So I'm going to hit selective, plus sign, the radial gradient, which is in the middle. And then I'm going to drag out something like this, and I can move it down so it's kind of around her, mostly her head. Right, I might make it a little bit skinnier. And I don't want her selected right now. I want to control the background, so I want the opposite, the inverse. That's going to be the button on the left right above the trash can. All right, so now what I have is red on the areas that are selected, which is the outside of her, outside of the circle, and it feathers into the circle just a little bit. I'm going to come under light, and I'm going to bring the exposure down. All right, so you can see where I get really crazy, like a dramatic 80s, like trippy portrait. We don't want that, but we want to make it, you know, just darken it a little bit, darken that background, and then I'm going to click the check mark. I'm going to do a selective again, another radial. And I'm going to do one about the same size, whoop, something like this. And then this one I'm going to keep on her. I'm going to do light, and I'm just going to brighten her just a little bit. So she stands out and the background is darker. So before, after, before, after, and I probably got her a little bit too bright. So I might come back in and click on that one, come under that, bring my exposure down. I got a little too carried away and looking a little bit better. So now what I would do is I would come under versions and create a new version and call this final edit. Click create. And then share this one out to Flickr And then you're going to label it, you know, like before and after, or basic edit, final edit. Yeah, let's do basic edit, final edit. You're going to have them both in the same album. And that's a quick run through, or in-depth run through. Not so quick. Hope it works out for you. I'm excited to see what your guys' portraits look like.